everyone, I'm Jasmine Haynes. I'm here with James Mason, who is helping to coordinate much of the conference's work around our response to General Conference 2019. How are you doing today, James?
Doing well, thank you.
Good, good, good. James, days after the conclusion of the special called session of General Conference, there were 11 district gatherings scheduled throughout the state just to make sure everybody had an opportunity to come and hear. For those who weren't able to attend and may not be aware of what happened at them, your portion of that conversation was about opportunities with training on how to love and respect one another, even in times of conflict. What's one of the main things you want people to hear about that training?
One of the themes that we talked about in discussing the training is that this is about equipping and not fixing people. Oftentimes when you hear about training, it's, well, what am I doing wrong, or how do I need to be fixed, or something of that nature. But one of the things that Bishop Swanson talked about at each of these gatherings is the notion that we're familiar with in our Christian journey of sanctification, of being called and set apart for a specific purpose. And so during this season, we think that it's important to help equip people and to train them for how they're going to react in this new season. And so we want to help to prepare and equip people for the new settings that they're finding themselves in and with relationships with other people.
So besides the tension and conflict among us, the church, right now in this season, after the outcome of the called session of General Conference, what are some other ways that this opportunity to have this training can be helpful to the clergy and laity in our churches?
One of the things that we think is very important is that we've had so much conversation around the topic of human sexuality that people think this training is going to be all about that. While that's going to frame a lot of our conversation and understanding, I think the thing that is really important that we begin to understand is this is not the last hard issue that we are going to be called to deal with. That in our spiritual journey, we are going to continue to be confronted with situations where we have differences of opinion and often deeply held beliefs based on deeply held theological convictions. And we've got to learn how to live in that context. And if we continue to divide and have this great tension around every single issue, we're never going to learn to live together. And then we're going to have a tremendous difficulty in fulfilling our mission of making disciples for Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. So that's why we think it's important to look at this, not just in this context, but more broadly, that this will continue to equip people and help them down the road as new things arise.
James, it took about 2 weeks for you and David and Bishop Swanson to tour all 11 districts, and there were still some people who weren't able to attend. How is this training going to be made accessible to all the churches within the Mississippi Conference? What's the logistics behind this opportunity with these trainings?
Yeah, it's a great question because, as you've alluded to, there's a tremendous challenge in us being able to provide high-quality professional training from the northeast corner of Mississippi with Corinth and Iuka over to the Delta, to the central part of the state, the Gulf Coast, Brookhaven, Natchez. I mean, we're a very large conference. And so the only way that we're going to be able to deliver this training is going to be to leverage our technology. So on the option 1 and 2 that I'll be talking about in a little while, those are going to be made available online using a Zoom type webinar that individuals would participate in. So you would require a computer with a camera and microphone, but it's one that we can help prepare people for because we think this training is so important that people are going to take the effort to do that. So that's going to be sort of the logistically of how we're going to get it into all the corners of our state. The other thing I would tell people about on the logistics is there will be a modest registration cost. We're really going to provide an exceptional training opportunity and bring in a professional trainer that's going to do a great job. And so to sort of help offset that cost is one of the reasons. But the other reason is that this is going to take a commitment because we're committing a lot of resources and energy in making this available, and we want people to take this seriously. And so we're going to have that piece as well with the cost.
So you mentioned that with these trainings there will be options. Give me an example of what one of those options will be.
Option one, which is going to be the shortest one, is going to be around courageous conversations. This is for individuals who would commit to 2 90-minute sessions that would be done over a 2-week period. What folks would do in this session is begin to learn how to talk about the tough conversations that have taken place around human sexuality and what happened at General Conference. We're going to break this option into 3 groups that you could choose to be a part of. You know, the first group that we would make available is to people who perhaps they were a One Church Plan supporter. They supported the Connected Conference plan, and they're very broken and they're very frustrated with what happened. And maybe they're even asking the question, can I remain in my local church? Can I remain in the United Methodist Church? We want to provide a framework for people who are in that place to have a very real, a very honest and authentic conversation about those hard questions. A second group could be, maybe it's a group of people who were very supportive of the traditional plan and they're pleased with the outcome, but their heart is broken for a whole other set of reasons. Their heart's broken because they're in community or connection with people with whom they have deep theological beliefs and differences of opinion. And they don't know how to talk about that. And they don't have the language, and they don't know how to do that with both sensitivity and with integrity. So that would be another group that we would work with and helping to equip them with some language to use. And then maybe the third group could be people who are advocates of the traditional plan, but when they hear about all the unanswered questions and about judicial council rulings that are still coming out and that this might not be constitutional, they're frustrated for a different set of reasons. So this option one is going to give some opportunities to people to how to engage in those conversations and to work through some of the things that they're feeling.
James, the second option I remember you mentioning while at the district gathering was productive conflict training. Tell us about that and how it differs from option one, which focuses on having courageous conversations.
Yeah, there's a couple things. One, it'll be similar to option one in that this will be another training opportunity that is strictly focused on individuals. This would not be a training where you would want to get a group of people together and participate. It's very individually focused. But what changes in option two is this is a much more in-depth commitment and opportunity for people. Instead of just 2 90-minute sessions, this would be 8 hours over a 5-week period. Right now, we would envision spreading that out 1 day a week that people would participate. And what we're going to do is we're going to get into much more detail on the courageous conversations. And one of the things that you will often hear in the civilian world, and maybe people have heard in their workplace, is this notion of crucial conversations. And these are conversations that have 3 elements. They have high stakes, they're strong emotions, and typically there are strong differences of opinion. When we encounter topics like that, oftentimes 1 of 2 things happens. Either we avoid the conversation and nothing good happens, or we engage in it in a destructive way because we're just not prepared and equipped to have that type of discussion. So it's helping people understand that. A quick example that we use in the training, we talked about understanding that when you get into that type of setting, that type of conversation, the body begins to produce adrenaline. And usually it's a fight or flight reaction. And so the blood begins to rush to your extremities because either your legs to run away or your arms to fight. And what begins to happen is that the blood flows away from the brain. And so the part of our brain that we most need that helps us with higher order thinking skills in this very tough conversation, we're least prepared physiologically to engage. And so there are lots of things like that that we want to help again to equip people. This would get into more details about thinking theologically around questions. We've talked about how this is not just for this one question around human sexuality, but it's for things that we will encounter in the future. And so we'll talk about the Wesleyan quadrilateral as a methodology for looking and examining tough questions and how do we resolve those type things. So this would be, again, a much greater commitment, but one that would go in a lot more detail for people over these 5 sessions.
So a higher commitment, but still fits into the schedule of somebody who is quite busy.
That's right. And we realize that there are going to be some opportunities where somebody's just going to have an absolutely unavoidable conflict on 1 or maybe 2 of the opportunities. And we would envision doing these at night. but we will record them. And so if you're a registered and paid participant in this class, you would be given the opportunity to watch that and still participate. So we don't want people to think that just because I've got this special family event that I absolutely cannot miss on this evening, that's going to make it impossible for you to participate in this. So we do want to have some flexibility there.
So what's available for those who would prefer an in-person training as opposed to something offered online?
I know a lot of people are really interested in having something done in person. We are not going to be able to offer that ourselves right now, but what we do want to do is we want to invite leaders, both laity and clergy from our churches, to come to option 3, which is a train the trainer or an apostle model. We want to bring together a few key people who can then take all the trainings that we've talked about in option 1 around courageous conversations and option 2 around the productive conflict training. We want them to be able to take out and offer that in person. We're going to actually ask individuals to apply to do this because it's going to take a unique skill set, because this is a very challenging thing to lead training around this topic. It's got to be someone who is at ease presenting, but also some folks who can deal with having the emotional intelligence and the ability to be empathetic. Now, it could be someone who's very passionate about this subject, but it can't be somebody who's taking a position of advocacy and trying to convince people of a certain position. This is to try to be able to listen and understand perspectives from all sides of this issue and others that we'll be facing. But that's going to be option 3. It's going to be a 3-day intensive in-person training after these individuals go through the courageous conversations training and they go through the productive conflict. Then we will bring them together and use the time to give them techniques and tips and how to actually deliver this training. And so that'll be the third and the most comprehensive option available.
What's the projected schedule for these upcoming trainings?
One of the things that was a key consideration for us was getting on the other side of the Judicial Council decisions that are going to be made at the end of April. So the first training we envision happening is going to be towards the end of May, on May the 17th and the 24th. That's going to be that option 1 around courageous conversations. So the individuals who sign up for that will give them some options to see what time slot during those days makes the most sense. But that would be option 1. On option 2, we're projecting a series of 5 Tuesday evenings from 7:30 to 9 p.m. starting on May the 28th and going through the end of June. That would be the productive conflict training on option 2. And then right now that option 3, the train the trainer apostle model, that's going to be an in-depth one, and that's going to, right now we're looking at around the July 30th to August 2nd time frame. So people who are interested in doing any of these trainings, we want to get those dates out there so you could go ahead and sort of save them and pencil them in to try to reserve that space while we're finalizing these details.
Where can people go to learn more, and if they want to go ahead and register?
Yeah, so what we would invite people to do is on the conference website, where we have all the other information related to General Conference 2019, there'll be a couple of links there. One will be to a summary document that will outline in more detail all the different training options that we've discussed here today. But then there'll also be a link that they can go and sign up to be put on the distribution list, so that when registration opens and we start confirming people's participation, they'll be sure to receive the emails directly.
James, thanks so much for sitting down and sharing this information with us. If you'd like to learn more about what happened at the district gatherings, make sure you check out Bishop Swanson's and David Stott's video as well.